Nolan Thorne saved the Rodriguez manufacturing invoice for last, knowing the numbers would be wrong again. He sat at his home office desk, coffee growing cold beside his laptop, watching the cursor blink against the spreadsheet. Third-quarter logistics for a mid-tier client shouldn't take this long, but Rodriguez never learned to track their own inventory properly. The house felt empty even with Kara somewhere upstairs. She'd been moving around up there for the past hour. Phone pressed to her ear, voice too low to understand the words. Lennox wouldn't be home from school for another 2 hours. The silence between the walls had weight to it now, something thick and uncomfortable that hadn't been there 6 months ago. Nolan corrected the shipping codes and moved to the next client file. His business ran smooth because he never let details slide. Every contract reviewed twice. Every delivery tracked. Every payment verified. 17 years building his supply chain consulting practice, and he'd never lost a client to sloppy work. Footsteps on the stairs. Kara appeared in his office doorway, car keys already in her hand. "I'm going to meet Sloan for lunch," she said. "Then I have that board meeting for the nonprofit." Nolan glanced at the clock. 11:30. Which restaurant? That new place on South First. She shifted the keys from one hand to the other. "Why?" "Just wondering. You've been eating out a lot lately." "It's called networking, Nolan. Some of us have to actually show our faces to do our jobs." He studied her face. Kara had always been direct, but this edge was sharper now. More defensive. She wore the navy dress that cost $300, the one she saved for important meetings. Her makeup looked fresh, like she'd just reapplied it. "What time will you be home?" "I don't know. Maybe 8. Maybe later." She paused at the doorway. "Can you pick up Lennox from practice?" "Already planned on it." She left without saying goodbye. Nolan heard the garage door open, then close. Her BMW backed out of the driveway with the engine running too fast. He returned to the Rodriguez file, but his mind stayed on Kara's answer. Maybe 8. Maybe later. She used to give exact times. Used to text if plans changed. Used to ask about his day before mentioning her own. The phone buzzed. Text from Lennox. "Dad, practice ends at 6, but coach wants to talk to parents about state competition. Can you stay after?" Nolan typed back, "Of course. See you at 6. Another text, this one from his mother. "Gloria here. Haven't seen you both in weeks. Dinner Sunday." He hesitated before responding. "I'll ask Kara and let you know." But he already knew what Kara would say. She'd have plans. She always had plans now. Nolan finished the Rodriguez file and moved to the next client. The afternoon stretched ahead of him, quiet and predictable, just the way he preferred it, or at least the way he used to prefer it. Now, the quiet felt like waiting for something to break. The memory hit him while he waited in the school parking lot for Lennox. Hurricane Harvey, August 2017. Water everywhere, half of Houston underwater, and the Red Cross warehouse in complete chaos. Nolan had volunteered his consulting services for free, spent 3 weeks organizing their supply chain so relief packages actually reached the people who needed them. Kara had been there too, working PR for one of the donor organizations. He noticed her first because she asked good questions, not the usual nonprofit softball questions about feel-good stories. She wanted to know why the warehouse was failing, what systems needed fixing, how to prevent the same problems next time. "You're the logistics guy," she'd said that first day, finding him in the maze of donation boxes. "Everyone says you're the reason anything gets delivered on time. I just organize what's already there, right? Like that's easy." She'd smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "I'm Kara. I'm trying to write a press release about your work, but nobody can explain what you actually do. I make sure things go where they're supposed to go. That's it. That's everything." She'd laugh then, genuine and warm. "Okay, logistics guy. Show me how you make sure things go where they're supposed to go." He'd shown her the tracking system he'd built, explained how proper inventory management could cut delivery times in half. She'd listened without checking her phone once, asked follow-up questions that proved she understood the concepts. Most people's eyes went blank when he talked about supply chain optimization. Kara had leaned in closer. They'd worked late that night, organizing shipments for the morning trucks. Somewhere between sorting medical supplies and loading water bottles, she told him about growing up in Dallas, about parents who expected her to marry well and looked pretty doing it. He'd told her about his father's construction business, about learning that work worth doing was worth doing right. "You're different," she'd said near midnight, as they finished the last pallet. "Most guys I meet, they want to impress me with what they own. You just want to get the job done. The job matters." "It does." She'd touched his arm then, just briefly. "I like that about you." 3 months later, she'd moved to Austin. 6 months after that, they were engaged. Her parents had insisted on the prenup, citing Kara's trust fund and their family's reputation. The document was thorough, covering every possible scenario from death to disability to infidelity. If either party commits adultery, Verity had read aloud during the contract review. The unfaithful spouse forfeits all claims to marital property, shared assets, and wealth acquired during the marriage. Nolan had looked at Kara across the lawyer's conference table. "You okay with this?" "It's fair," she'd said. "Neither of us is going anywhere, right?" "Right." They'd signed the papers that afternoon. 12 years ago, when fairness seemed simple and promises felt permanent. Now Nolan sat in his truck, watching teenagers stream out of the school building, and wondered when Kara had stopped asking good questions. When she'd stopped listening to his answers. When she'd started looking at her phone instead of his face. Lennox jogged across the parking lot, soccer bag slung over his shoulder. He had Nolan's build, tall and lean, but Kara's quick smile and sharp eyes. "Hey, Dad." Lennox climbed into the passenger seat. "Coach says I might make varsity next year if I work on my footwork this summer." "That's good news. You want to work on it?" "Yeah, definitely. Can we set up the cones in the backyard again?" "This weekend." They drove home through Austin traffic, Lennox talking about practice and the upcoming state competition. Normal father-son conversation, the kind Nolan treasured because it reminded him that some things still worked the way they were supposed to. "Is Mom cooking tonight?" Lennox asked as they pulled into the driveway. "She's at a meeting. Probably won't be home until late." "Again?" Nolan glanced at his son. "Yeah, again. She's been doing that a lot lately. Her job keeps her busy." Lennox was quiet for a moment. "Dad, are you and Mom okay?" The question hung in the air between them. Nolan could lie, give some easy answer about work stress and busy schedules. But Lennox was 17, old enough to see what was happening and smart enough to deserve honesty. "I don't know," Nolan said finally. "But whatever happens, you and I are okay. That won't change." Lennox nodded, understanding more than Nolan wished he had to. Kara came home at 10:30, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a smile Nolan hadn't seen in months. "We need to celebrate," she announced, setting the bottle on the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. Nolan looked up from his laptop. He'd been working on a new client proposal, something to keep his hands busy while he waited for her to come home. "Celebrate what?" "I won the lottery." She pulled a scratch-off ticket from her purse, set it next to the champagne. $15 million. The number hit him like a physical force. Nolan stared at the ticket, then at Kara's face. Her eyes were bright, almost manic. Her cheeks were flushed. $15 million. $15 million. She laughed high and sharp. "I bought at that gas station on the way home from lunch. Just on a whim. Can you believe it?" Nolan picked up the ticket. The silver coating had been scratched off to reveal 3 matching symbols. The amount was printed clearly, $15 million. "What did you buy this?" "Today. Around 2 o'clock, I think. Right after lunch with Sloan." "You had lunch at 11:30. Kara's smile flickered. "We talked for a long time. You know how Sloan gets." Nolan studied the ticket more carefully. The timestamp showed 4:47 p.m. "This says you bought it at 4:47. Does it matter what time I bought it?" "I won $15 million, Nolan. We're rich." She moved around the kitchen with nervous energy, opening cabinets and closing them again. Her hand shook slightly as she searched for champagne glasses. "We should call the lottery office," Nolan said. "There's probably a process for claiming this much money." "I already called. They said I can come in tomorrow to start the paperwork." She found the glasses, set them on the counter. "But first we celebrate." She opened the champagne, poured 2 glasses. The wine bubbled over the rim of hers, and she licked it off her fingers. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. Nolan didn't drink. "What kind of new beginnings?" "I don't know yet. Maybe we travel. Maybe we move somewhere bigger. Maybe we just enjoy not worrying about money anymore. We don't worry about money now. You know what I mean? She took a large sip of champagne. Freedom. Options. The ability to do whatever we want. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. Who's texting you at 10:30? Probably Sloan. I told her about the ticket. Kara finished her champagne in 3 quick swallows. God, I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed. She left the kitchen without kissing him goodnight, taking her phone with her. Nolan sat alone with the lottery ticket and the half-empty champagne bottle, trying to make sense of what felt wrong about the whole conversation. The next morning, Kara was gone before he woke up. She'd left a note on the coffee maker, gone to lottery office. Back this afternoon, Nolan made coffee and studied the note. She used to sign her notes with love, Kara, or at least Zoxo. Now, just the initial, like a business memo. His phone rang. Sloane's name on the caller ID. Hey, Nolan. Is Kara there? She went to the lottery office. Did you try her cell? It went straight to voicemail. Listen, can you have her call me when she gets back? It's about the foundation gala next month. We need to finalize the catering. Nolan frowned. What foundation gala? The children's literacy thing. The one Kara's been organizing for months. Don't tell me she forgot to mention it to you. Must have slipped her mind. She's been busy, right? Well, anyway, have her call me. Sloan hung up before Nolan could ask any follow-up questions. He opened his laptop and searched for Children's Literacy Foundation galas in Austin. Found 3 different organizations hosting events in the next 2 months. None of them mentioned Kara's nonprofit. He spent the morning working on client files, but his mind kept drifting back to the lottery ticket. $15 million bought a lot of freedom, a lot of options, a lot of new beginnings that IT also bought a lot of secrets. Kara returned home around 3, carrying shopping bags from stores Nolan didn't recognize. Expensive stores, based on the thick paper and ribbon handles. How did it go at the lottery office? He asked. Fine. Lots of paperwork. They said it'll take a few weeks to process everything. She set the bags on the kitchen table. I bought a few things to celebrate. What kind of things? Just clothes. And some jewelry. Nothing crazy. She pulled a dress from one of the bags, something black and sleek that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Then a pair of shoes with red soles that he recognized as expensive even though he didn't know the brand name. Kara, maybe we should be careful with spending until the money is actually in our account. I use my credit card. I'll pay it off when the check comes in. She folded the dress carefully, avoiding his eyes. Besides, don't I deserve to treat myself? I just won $15 million. Of course you do. I just think. I need to take a shower. She gathered the bags and headed upstairs. Lennox has practice tonight, right? I might go out for dinner with some friends. What friends? Just some people from the nonprofit. We're discussing strategy for the fall fundraising campaign. She disappeared upstairs before he could ask which nonprofit or which friends. Nolan heard the shower start, then her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter where she'd forgotten it. The text preview showed on the lock screen. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place as yesterday? T. Nolan stared at the message until the screen went dark. T. He didn't know anyone in Kara's life whose name started with T. That when Kara came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair wet and dressed in jeans and a sweater, Nolan handed her the phone. You got a text. She glanced at it, then slipped the phone into her pocket without responding to the message. Who's T? What? The text. Someone named T wants to meet you tonight. Kara's face went blank for just a moment. Then she shrugged. Tanya from the board. She wants to discuss the budget. Tanya from which board? The Literacy Foundation. God. Nolan, why are you interrogating me? I'm not interrogating you. I'm asking about your plans. My plans are to have dinner with colleagues and discuss work. Is that okay with you? Her voice had gone cold, defensive. The same tone she'd used yesterday when he asked about lunch with Sloan. Nolan recognized the pattern now, the way she answered questions with other questions, the way she provided details that couldn't be verified. Of course it's okay. Just be careful driving home. It's supposed to rain tonight. Kara softened slightly. I will. Don't wait up. She left at 6:30, kissing his cheek before she walked out the door. A quick, dry kiss that felt like habit rather than affection. Nolan watched her BMW disappear down the street. then went upstairs to get Lennox for soccer practice. But first, he stopped by his home office and made a note in his day planner. Kara dinner with T, Tanya, Literacy Foundation Board. If Kara was telling the truth, the note would never matter. If she wasn't, Nolan wanted a record of exactly what lies she'd told and when. Friday afternoon, Nolan finished the Peterson Industries contract 2 hours ahead of schedule. The client wanted their new warehouse distribution system operational by Monday, and Nolan had spent the week coordinating between 3 different trucking companies and a freight management software provider. Complex logistics, but straightforward execution. The kind of problem that had clean solutions if you applied proper methodology, that he saved the final report and leaned back in his office chair. 2:15 in the afternoon. Kara wasn't expecting him home until 5. Lennox had study group after school and wouldn't need pickup until 6. Nolan closed his laptop and decided to surprise Kara with an early afternoon together. Maybe they could talk without the distractions of phones and schedules and whatever was creating the distance between them. Maybe she'd explain about the lottery ticket and the new clothes and the text messages from T. The garage was empty when he pulled in the driveway, but Kara's BMW sat in the guest parking spot next to the house. Strange. She never parked there unless the garage was full. Music played inside the house, something low and jazzy that he didn't recognize. Not Kara's usual taste. She preferred pop music and podcasts about social media marketing. Nolan used his key to open the front door. The music grew louder, coming from the living room. He heard voices underneath it, but couldn't make out words. He stepped into the foyer and called out, "Kara, I'm home early." No response. The voices continued, mixed with what sounded like laughter. Nolan walked toward the living room, expecting to find Kara watching television or hosting one of her impromptu board meetings. Instead, he found his wife sitting on the lap of a man he'd never seen before. The man was broad-shouldered and tan, wearing an expensive-looking polo shirt. His hands rested on Kara's waist like they belonged there. Kara wore the black dress she'd bought with the lottery money, the one that probably cost more than most people's rent. On the couch across from him, Sloane sat with a wine glass in her hand, smiling like she was watching entertainment. In the armchair near the window, Nolan's mother Gloria sat with her hands folded in her lap, looking deeply uncomfortable on the ottoman next to Gloria. Lennox sat with his phone in his hands, staring at the floor. Everyone turned to look at Nolan when he entered the room. The man's hands didn't move from Kara's waist. Kara didn't stand up or pull away. She just looked at Nolan with an expression he couldn't read. "Nolan," she said, her voice steady and cold. "You're home early. I finished work early." Nolan's voice sounded strange to his own ears, like it was coming from someone else. "I thought I'd surprise you." "Well, you did." Kara shifted slightly on the man's lap, but didn't get up. "This is Tanner." "Tanner, this is my husband, Nolan." Tanner nodded, but didn't offer to shake hands. "Nice to meet you, man." Nolan looked around the room. His mother wouldn't meet his eyes. Lennox was still staring at his phone. Sloane took another sip of wine and watched the scene like it was a television show. "What's going on here?" Nolan asked. Kara stood up slowly, smoothing down her dress. "We need to talk." "Okay, let's talk. Not privately. Here, in front of everyone." She took a deep breath. "Nolan, you're done here." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What?" "You're done. This marriage is over. I want you to pack your things and leave." Nolan felt something cold spread through his chest. "Kara, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that we haven't been happy in years. That we barely talk anymore. That you care more about your spreadsheets than about me." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I'm talking about the fact that I've found someone who actually makes me feel alive." She moved back toward Tanner, who pulled her down onto his lap again. His hands immediately returned to her waist, possessive and obvious. "You've got 30 minutes to pack," Kara continued. "Tanner will be living here now. He's my future. You're not." Nolan looked at his mother, who was staring at her hands. At Lennox, who had gone pale. At Sloane, who was still smiling. "Gloria?" Nolan said quietly. "Lennox? How long have you been here?" Gloria finally looked up. "About an hour. Kara asked us to come over. She said she had something important to tell us. She wanted witnesses," Lennox said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nolan understood then. This wasn't an impulsive decision or an accident he'd walked into. This was planned, orchestrated. Kara had arranged for his family to be here when he came home, so they could watch her humiliate him. Tanner's hands moved higher on Kara's waist. Nothing personal, man. Sometimes these things just happen. Nothing personal, Nolan repeated. He looked at Kara, really looked at her. The woman who'd asked good questions during Hurricane Harvey. The woman who'd signed a prenup agreeing that infidelity would end their marriage. The woman who'd won $15 million and immediately started buying expensive clothes and having mysterious dinner meetings. You forgot something, Nolan said quietly. Kara frowned. What? You forgot something important, and that will cost you everything. He turned and walked out of the living room, leaving them all behind. Behind him, he heard Tanner ask, "What's he talking about?" Nolan climbed the stairs to his bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the closet. He packed quickly and methodically. Clothes for a week, toiletries, important documents. His hands moved automatically while his mind processed what had just happened. Kara had planned this. The lottery ticket, the expensive purchases, the mysterious meetings. She'd been setting up her exit for weeks, maybe months. The $15 million gave her the confidence to blow up their marriage in the most humiliating way possible. But she'd made one crucial mistake. Nolan pulled his copy of their prenuptial agreement from the filing cabinet in his office. 23 pages of legal language that Kara had apparently forgotten about. He photographed each page with his phone, then called Verity Kemp. "Verity? It's Nolan. I need to see you Monday morning. First thing, what's going on? My marriage just ended, and I need you to help me enforce our prenuptial agreement." He hung up and finished packing. Downstairs, the music still played. He could hear voices, but couldn't make out the words. Nolan carried his suitcase to the truck and loaded in the back. Then he walked back into the house one more time. The living room had the same configuration. Kara on Tanner's lap, Sloan on the couch, Gloria and Lennox looking miserable. "I'm leaving now," Nolan announced. Kara nodded. "Good. Lennox, you can stay here tonight if you want. Or you can come with me to your grandmother's house." Lennox stood up immediately. "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to choose sides," Kara said quickly. "This is between your father and me." "No," Lennox said, looking directly at his mother. "This involves all of us. And I choose Dad." He walked past Kara and Tanner without another word. Gloria followed him, pausing only to look at her daughter-in-law with disappointment. "This isn't how you treat family, Kara," Gloria said quietly. "Family doesn't abandon family," Kara replied. Nolan looked at his wife one last time. She was beautiful and confident and completely certain that she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. "See you in court," he said. Monday morning at 8 a.m., Nolan sat across from Verity Kemp in her downtown law office. Through the windows, Austin spread out below them, the city waking up to another week of business and complications. Verity had been his friend since college, the only person he trusted with legal matters that required both competence and discretion. "Show me everything," she said, setting a legal pad on the desk between them. Nolan opened his phone and pulled up the photos he'd taken Friday night. The prenuptial agreement, photographed page by page in his home office while his marriage fell apart downstairs. Then he scrolled to the recording he'd made Saturday morning. "I need you to hear this first." He'd driven to the house Saturday to pick up more clothes for Lennox. Kara's BMW was gone, but Tanner's black Mustang sat in the driveway. Nolan had used his key to enter through the kitchen, where he'd found Tanner making coffee and talking on his phone. "Yeah, she's loaded now," Tanner was saying. $15 million from some lottery ticket, plus whatever this house is worth. Probably another $1 million easy. Nolan had started recording. "When do I get access to the accounts?" Tanner continued. "I've got some debts I need to clear up before my ex finds out where I am." A pause. "No, she's completely under control. Thinks she's in love. Women like her, they're easy once you know what buttons to push. Give them some attention, make them feel special, and they'll hand over everything." Another pause. "The husband? He's not a problem. Some boring spreadsheet guy. She said he won't even fight the divorce, probably too embarrassed. By the time he figures out what happened, I'll be long gone with half the money." Tanner had laughed then, a sound that made Nolan's hands clench into fists. "Trust me, This is the easiest score I've ever run. Rich woman going through a midlife crisis, looking for excitement. I give her 6 months of romance, then disappear with enough money to retire. Now Verity listened to the recording twice, taking notes on her legal pad. When it finished, she looked up at Nolan with something like admiration. You recorded this on your own property, in my own kitchen. Texas is a one-party consent state. This recording is completely admissible. She smiled. Your wife picked the wrong husband to underestimate. Verity spent the next hour reviewing the prenuptial agreement. The document was thorough, covering every possible scenario that might end the marriage. Death, disability, abandonment, and infidelity. The infidelity clause was particularly detailed. If either party commits adultery during the marriage, Verity read aloud, the unfaithful spouse shall forfeit all claims to marital property, shared assets, and wealth acquired during the term of the marriage. What exactly does that cover? Nolan asked. Everything. The house, vehicles, bank accounts, retirement funds, and any money she's acquired since he got married, including lottery winnings. Even though she bought the ticket with her own money. Doesn't matter. You've been married 12 years. Under Texas community property law, anything acquired during the marriage belongs to both spouses equally. But the prenup supersedes that. If she committed adultery, she forfeits her rights to community property. Verity turned the page. There's more. The agreement also states that the unfaithful spouse is responsible for all legal fees incurred during divorce proceedings. She'll be paying for both lawyers. Nolan studied the document he'd signed 12 years ago. At the time, it had seemed like an abstract legal precaution, something to satisfy Kara's parents' concerns about protecting family wealth. He'd never imagined actually needing to enforce it. What do we need to prove adultery? We need evidence of an intimate relationship. The recording helps, but it's not enough by itself. We need proof that they're physically involved. I walked in on them. She was sitting on his lap. That's a start. Do we have any witnesses to their affair? Nolan thought about Friday afternoon. My mother and my son were there when I found them together. Sloan was there too, but she's not exactly a neutral witness. Your mother and son would testify. Yes. Verity made more notes. We'll need additional evidence. Photos, phone records, credit card statements showing hotel visits or gifts. Anything that establishes a pattern of intimate behavior. How long will this take? If we can prove adultery quickly and cleanly, we can file for an emergency injunction to freeze her assets while the divorce proceeds. The lottery money, the house, everything gets locked down until the court makes a final determination. Nolan felt something that might have been satisfaction. How quickly? If you can give me more evidence this week, I can file by Friday. What kind of evidence? Follow her. Take pictures. Document where she goes, who she's with, how long she stays. If they're meeting at hotels or his apartment. If they're acting like a couple in public, if she's spending marital assets on him. Verity leaned forward. But be careful. Don't trespass on private property. Don't hack into her accounts. We need evidence that will hold up in court, not get us arrested. Nolan nodded. I understand. There's something else you should know. Verity's expression turned serious. This kind of aggressive legal action will destroy any possibility of reconciliation. Once we file these papers, there's no going back. Are you sure this is what you want? Nolan thought about Friday afternoon. Kara on Tanner's lap, telling him their marriage was over in front of their son. Tanner's hands on her waist like he owned her. The way she'd smiled when she told Nolan to pack his things. She made her choice, he said. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Nolan spent the week documenting Kara's new life with the efficiency he brought to supply chain logistics. Tuesday evening, he followed her BMW from their house to a restaurant downtown, where she met Tanner for dinner. They sat at a corner table, holding hands across the tablecloth. Nolan photographed them through the restaurant window from across the street. Wednesday, he tracked them to a boutique hotel near the airport. Kara's car was in the parking lot from 2 p.m. until after 6. Tanner's Mustang was there too. Nolan took pictures of both vehicles, then waited in his truck until they emerged together. More photos of them walking to their cars, Kara's hand on Tanner's arm. Thursday, they went shopping on South Congress. Expensive stores, the kind that sold single items for more money than most people spend on groceries in a month. Through the storefront windows, Nolan watched Kara try on jewelry while Tanner nodded approval. She bought 3 pieces, paying with what looked like a credit card. Friday morning, Verity filed the emergency motion. The courthouse was busy with the usual Friday divorce proceedings. Nolan sat in the hallway outside Family Court 3, watching lawyers shuttle between courtrooms with armloads of documents. His case was scheduled for 10 a.m. Judge Morrison is tough but fair, Verity had explained on the drive over. She doesn't like games, and she doesn't like people who try to hide assets during divorce proceedings. If we can prove Kara committed adultery, Morrison will enforce the prenup to the letter. At exactly 10 o'clock, they were called into the courtroom. Judge Morrison was a gray-haired woman in her 60s who looked like she'd heard every possible excuse for bad behavior during marriage. This is an emergency motion to freeze marital assets pending divorce proceedings, she announced, reading from the file. Mr. Thorne alleges that his wife has committed adultery in violation of their prenuptial agreement. Mrs. Thorne is not present and has not retained counsel. Proceed. Verity stood up. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that Mrs. Thorne has engaged in an extramarital affair with one Tanner Voss. She has also recently acquired $15 million in lottery winnings, which under the prenuptial agreement would be forfeit if adultery is proven. She presented the photographs Nolan had taken, the recording from Saturday morning, and affidavits from Gloria and Lennox describing what they'd witnessed Friday afternoon. Judge Morrison reviewed the materials without comment. After 10 minutes, she looked up. This evidence certainly suggests an intimate relationship between Mrs. Thorne and Mr. Voss. The prenuptial agreement is clear about the consequences of proven adultery. She made notes on the file. I'm granting the emergency injunction. All marital assets are frozen pending final determination of this case. Mrs. Thorne's access to joint bank accounts, credit cards, and the lottery winnings is suspended immediately. She signed the order with a flourish. Mrs. Thorne has 10 days to respond to these allegations and retain counsel. If she fails to respond, we'll proceed to final judgment based on the evidence presented today. Outside the courthouse, Verity handed Nolan a copy of the signed order. The bank will freeze her accounts by end of business today. Credit cards will be suspended. She won't be able to access the lottery money or any joint assets. What about the house? She can live there for now, but she can't sell it or take out loans against it. Basically, she's financially cut off until this gets resolved. Nolan folded the court order and put it in his jacket pocket. How long until she finds out? Probably when she tries to use a credit card and it gets declined. Could be this afternoon. They walked to their cars in the courthouse parking lot. Downtown Austin hummed around them. People going about their normal Friday business, unaware that Nolan's marriage had just officially ended in a windowless courtroom. Are you okay? Verity asked. I'm fine. This is a big step, Nolan. Once the word gets out about the frozen assets and the adultery allegations, there's no putting this back together. Nolan thought about Kara sitting on Tanner's lap, telling him he was done. About Tanner's recorded conversation about easy money and emotional manipulation. About the way Kara had arranged for his family to witness his humiliation. It was already broken, he said. I'm just making sure the pieces fall the right way. Nolan was working in his home office Tuesday morning when Lennox called from school. Dad, you need to see this. What? Someone posted about Mom online. It's all over social media. Nolan opened his laptop and navigated to Instagram. The post was from an account called Austin Social Watch with 40,000 followers. The caption read, Local socialite Kara Thorne's world comes crashing down. Marriage ends in spectacular fashion after hubby discovers affair. Word is the prenup means she loses everything, including that $15 million lottery win. Hashtag Austin Drama, hashtag prenup problems. The post included 3 photos. Kara and Tanner holding hands at the restaurant. Kara trying on jewelry while Tanner watched, and a screenshot of the court filing that froze her assets in 12 hours. The post had gotten 8,000 likes and over 1,000 comments. Most of them were brutal. She thought she was smart, but forgot about the prenup. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Imagine throwing away your marriage for a gym bro and losing $15 million. I know her from the nonprofit circuit. Always acted like she was better than everyone. Nolan scrolled through the comments, recognizing names from Kara's social circle. Women who'd attended her dinner parties and charity events, now openly mocking her situation. His phone rang. Sloane's name on the caller ID. Nolan, you need to make this stop. Make what stop? The social media thing. Everyone's talking about Kara. It's humiliating. I didn't post anything. But you're the one who froze her accounts. You're the one who filed those papers. She's the one who had an affair. Sloane was quiet for a moment. Look, I know what it looked like on Friday. But maybe you misunderstood. I misunderstood my wife sitting on another man's lap while she told me to pack my things. People make mistakes, Nolan. Kara's going through a hard time. Maybe you could work something out privately without all this legal drama. No, she's my friend. I can't stand watching her get destroyed like this. She destroyed herself. I'm just making sure she can't take anything that doesn't belong to her when she goes. Nolan hung up and returned to the Instagram post. More comments had appeared, including several from people who claimed to know Tanner. Tanner Voss is a serial con artist. This is his MO. He did the same thing to my friend in Dallas. Targeted her right after her divorce settlement. His gym is about to get foreclosed. Dude's desperate for money. Someone should warn this woman before he takes everything and disappears. Nolan smiled grimly. Too late for warnings now. Wednesday afternoon, he drove past the house to pick up more clothes for Lennox. Kara's BMW was in the driveway, along with Tanner's Mustang and two other cars he didn't recognize. Through the front window, he could see people in the living room. Kara was pacing back and forth, gesturing with her hands. Tanner sat on the couch, talking on his phone. Other figures moved around the room, but Nolan couldn't identify them from the street. His phone buzzed. Text from Kara, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Nolan typed back, talk to my lawyer that I'm serious, Nolan. People are being cruel. The things they're saying online. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate me in front of our son. That's not what I was trying to do. That's exactly what you were trying to do. You arranged for witnesses. You wanted them to see you reject me. Please. Can we just talk like adults? Nolan stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to say yes, to find some way to end this that didn't involve lawyers and public humiliation and bitter custody battles. But he thought about Tanner's hands on Kara's waist, about the recording where Tanner called her an easy mark, about the way she'd smiled when she told Nolan their marriage was over, and no, he put the phone away and drove to his mother's house, where Lennox was waiting for him to help with geometry homework. Normal father-son activities, the kind that reminded him why this fight was worth having. Thursday evening, Nolan received a call from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Thorne? This is Detective Rodriguez with Austin PD. Do you know a Tanner Voss? Not personally. Why? We have a report that he stole property from your residence. Your wife called it in about an hour ago. Nolan felt something cold settle in his chest. What kind of property? Jewelry and cash. She says he took several $1,000s worth of items and left town. Is she pressing charges? She's thinking about it. The problem is they were living together, so it's complicated to prove theft versus a relationship dispute. I want to check with you since it's technically your property too. What exactly did he take? A Rolex watch, some necklaces, and about $3,000 in cash. She says he also damaged her phone and some furniture before he left. Nolan thought about the recording he'd made of Tanner's phone conversation. The part about debts he needed to clear up before his ex found out where he was. Officer, I have some information that might be relevant to your investigation. What kind of information? I recorded a conversation where Mr. Voss discussed his plans to take money and disappear. He described my wife as an easy mark he was manipulating for financial gain. There was a pause. Can you come down to the station? I'd like to hear that recording. 2 hours later, Nolan sat in a small interview room at the Austin Police Department, playing Tanner's recorded conversation for Detective Rodriguez. The detective listened without comment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. This certainly changes things, Rodriguez said when the recording ended. Sounds like Mr. Voss was running a long-term con. Your wife may have been as much a victim as anyone. What happens now? We'll put out a bolo for his vehicle and contact other jurisdictions where he might have pulled similar schemes. The theft charges are still valid, regardless of his relationship with your wife. Will you need me to testify? Possibly. Depends on whether we catch him and whether your wife decides to pursue charges. Nolan drove home through Austin traffic, thinking about Kara sitting in the police station, filing a report against the man she'd left her marriage for. He felt no satisfaction in her situation, just a hollow sense of inevitability. She'd trusted the wrong person and gotten exactly what she deserved. His phone rang as he pulled into his mother's driveway. Kara's name on the caller ID. Nolan, I need help. Her voice was small and shaky, nothing like the confident woman who'd told him to pack his things 5 days ago. What kind of help? Tanner's gone. He took things, expensive things, and he hurt me. Are you injured? Not physically. Not really. He threw my phone against the wall when I confronted him about the frozen accounts. Called me some horrible names. Said I was just a stupid rich woman who deserved whatever happened to me. Nolan was quiet for a moment. Did you call the police? Yes. They're investigating. But Nolan, I don't have any money. The accounts are frozen. The credit cards don't work. I can't even buy groceries. You can ask your parents for help. I called them. They won't take my calls. They saw the social media posts. They're embarrassed. What about Sloan? She's distancing herself. Says she can't be associated with this kind of drama. Kara's voice broke slightly. Everyone's treating me like I have some kind of disease. Nolan sat in his truck, listening to his wife cry over the phone. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to find some way to help. But he thought about Friday afternoon, about the way she'd arranged for witnesses to his humiliation, about Tanner's hands on her waist. I'm sorry this happened to you, he said finally. But I can't help you. Nolan, please. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But we were married for 12 years. That has to count for something. It counted for something when you were sitting on another man's lap telling me our marriage was over. I was confused. I thought I wanted something different. You thought you could humiliate me and take half of everything you'd won. But you forgot about the prenup. Kara was quiet for a long time. I didn't forget. I thought you'd never actually use it. Why? Because you love me. Because you're not cruel. Because I believed you'd want to work things out. I did love you. But you killed that when you chose to destroy our marriage in the most public, humiliating way possible. So this is it? You're just going to let me lose everything. You already lost everything that mattered. The money is just keeping score. Nolan hung up and sat in the dark truck, feeling empty and tired. Tomorrow he'd have to explain to Lennox why his mother was calling and crying. Tomorrow he'd have to continue living in the wreckage of a marriage that had ended not with love lost, but with trust betrayed and dignity destroyed. But tonight, he just wanted to go inside and help his son with geometry homework. Simple problems with clear solutions, the kind that reminded him why some things were worth fighting for and others were worth walking away from. Friday morning, Verity called with news that changed everything. Judge Morrison signed the final order, she said. Kara failed to respond to the adultery allegations within the 10-day deadline, so the court ruled in our favor by default. Nolan set down his coffee cup. What does that mean exactly? It means the prenup is fully enforceable. Kara forfeits all claims to marital property, including the house, vehicles, bank accounts, and the lottery winnings. Everything transfers to you. Everything. She also has to pay both legal fees as specified in the prenuptial agreement. The total is about $30,000 so far. Nolan looked around his mother's kitchen, where he'd been living for the past week. When can I move back into the house? Immediately. Kara has 48 hours to remove her personal belongings, but she has no legal right to remain in the residence. What about Lennox? Since she has no home and no financial resources, custody will likely go to you by default. We can file for emergency custody today if you want. Yes, file today. Nolan, there's something else. I got a call from Kara's attorney this morning. She finally hired a lawyer. She did. Public defender's office, since she can't afford private counsel. They want to negotiate a settlement. What kind of settlement? They're asking for spousal support and a partial claim to the lottery winnings. They argue that the adultery was a brief lapse in judgment not grounds for complete financial abandonment. Nolan thought about Tanner's recorded conversation, about the planning that had gone into humiliating him in front of his family, about the way Kara had smiled when she told him their marriage was over. No settlement. Are you sure? The public defender made it sound like Kara is in pretty desperate circumstances. She created those circumstances. Let her live with them. This will make the divorce final and absolute. No possibility of reconciliation, no ongoing relationship beyond co-parenting Lennox. Good. That afternoon, Nolan packed his truck with the belongings he'd taken to his mother's house and drove back to the house where his marriage had ended. The driveway was empty except for an old Honda Civic he didn't recognize. Inside, Kara was in the living room, loading books into cardboard boxes. She looked smaller than he remembered, wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of the expensive clothes she'd bought with lottery money. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, like she'd given up on trying to look impressive. "The court gave me 48 hours to get my things," she said without looking up. "I know. Most of the furniture was mine before we got married. I'm taking the books, some artwork, and personal items. Nothing we bought together." "Fine." Kara straightened up, finally meeting his eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I forgot something important. And the prenup. You were talking about the prenup." "Yes. I signed it 12 years ago. I never imagined I'd be in this situation. Neither did I." She gestured around the living room. "This house, this life, it all felt so permanent, like nothing could really change it. Things change when you decide to change them. I know. I made choices. Bad choices." She picked up another book, held it for a moment, then put it in the box. "I keep thinking about Hurricane Harvey. Do you remember?" "Yes. You were so focused, so sure about how to fix everything. I love that about you. I thought if I could be part of your life, I'd always feel that sure about things. What changed? I don't know. Somewhere along the way, I started feeling like I was just another problem for you to solve. Like you'd organized me into the right category and didn't need to think about me anymore." Nolan watched her pack books he'd bought for her, books they'd read together during the early years of their marriage. "So you decided to blow it all up." "I decided I wanted to feel important again. Special. Like someone's first choice instead of their default option. I never made you a default option. Didn't you?" Kara looked at him directly. "When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you surprised me with something just because you thought I'd like it?" Nolan started to answer, then realized he couldn't remember. Work had consumed more and more of his attention over the past few years. Kara had seemed content with their routine, their comfortable predictability. "That doesn't justify what you did." "No, it doesn't. Nothing justifies what I did." She closed the box and picked up another empty one. "But explains it. Does it matter now?" "Probably not. But I wanted you to know that I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because I was already hurt and too scared to tell you. You could have talked to me." "Could I? When was the last time we had a real conversation, Nolan? Not about schedules or bills or Lennox's school activities. About us. About what we wanted. About whether we were happy." Nolan thought about it and realized she was right. Their conversations had become purely functional over the past year. Status updates and logistics coordination, like a business partnership rather than a marriage. "But you still chose to handle it the worst possible way." "Yes, I did." Kara taped the box shut and labeled it with a black marker. "I was angry and scared and stupid. I let Tanner convince me that I deserved better, that you'd never fight for me anyway." "Where's he now?" "Gone. With $3,000 in cash and some jewelry. Turns out he was just as manipulative with me as I was with you." "Are you pressing charges?" "The police are handling it. I doubt they'll catch him. Men like Tanner, they know how to disappear." She moved to the bookshelf and started pulling down more volumes. Books about logistics and supply chain management that Nolan had recommended to her years ago. She'd actually read them, he remembered. Asked good questions about inventory optimization and distribution networks. "Where will you go?" "I found a studio apartment in East Austin. Month-to-month lease. It's not much, but it's what I can afford with the money I had in my personal checking account." "What about work?" "The nonprofit board asked for my resignation. Too much negative publicity. They didn't want the scandal to affect their fundraising." I'm sorry. Are you? Nolan considered the question. I'm sorry you lost your job. I'm not sorry you're facing consequences for your choices. That's fair. They worked in silence for the next hour, Kara packing her belongings while Nolan organized the papers and documents she'd left scattered around the house. The domestic routine felt strange and familiar at the same time, like a muscle memory from their marriage. What about Lennox? Kara asked as she carried a box toward the door. He'll live with me. You can see him whenever you want, assuming you can work out transportation. My car, the BMW, was purchased with marital funds. It stays here, so I have no car, no job, and no money. You have the money from your personal account, and you can get a job. Doing what? I worked in nonprofit PR for 8 years. Every organization in Austin knows about the scandal. Then we're somewhere else. Do something else. Kara loaded the box into the Honda Civic. You're really not going to help me at all. No, even though we were married for 12 years. Even though I'm the mother of your son. You gave up the right to my help when you decided to destroy our marriage in front of our family. So this is justice? I make one terrible mistake and lose everything forever. You didn't make one mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions designed to humiliate me and take as much money as possible. The only mistake was forgetting about the prenup. Kara stood by her car, keys in her hand, looking back at the house where she'd lived for 10 years. I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? I thought you'd fight for me. I thought when you saw me with someone else, you'd realize what you were losing and try to win me back. By sitting on another man's lap and telling me to pack my things. I was angry. I wanted you to feel what I'd been feeling. Abandoned, unimportant, easily replaced. Mission accomplished. But then you didn't fight. You just left, like I didn't matter enough to fight for. Nolan looked at his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, standing beside a borrowed car with boxes full of books and no idea what her life would look like tomorrow. Part of him felt sorry for her, but a larger part remembered the recording of Tanner's phone conversation, the social media posts, the way she'd arranged for witnesses to his humiliation. You mattered, he said finally. Past tense. Kara nodded and got into the Honda Civic. She drove away without looking back, leaving Nolan alone in the house where their marriage had ended. He stood in the driveway until her taillights disappeared, then went inside to call Lennox and tell him it was time to come home. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Nolan sat in the office of Austin Community Bank, signing papers that transferred $15 million into accounts under his sole control. The Lottery Commission had processed Kara's claim before the divorce proceedings began, but the prenuptial agreement superseded her right to the winnings. This is quite a windfall, Mr. Thorne, said the bank manager, a middle-aged woman who'd handled the Thorne family accounts for 8 years. Do you have plans for the money? Some of it, Nolan replied, reviewing the investment options she'd presented. I want to set up a college fund for my son. Maybe start a small foundation. What kind of foundation? Disaster relief logistics. Hurricane Harvey taught me that most relief organizations fail because they can't efficiently distribute supplies where they're needed. I think we could do better. The bank manager made notes on her legal pad. That's very admirable. How much were you thinking of committing to the foundation? $2 million to start. If we can prove the concept works, maybe more later. And the remaining funds, conservative investments, mutual funds, bonds, maybe some real estate. I'm not looking to get rich quick. I just want to make sure my son has options when he's older. They spent the next hour setting up the accounts and investment portfolios. When they finished, Nolan had more money than he'd ever imagined possessing, and a strange sense of anticlimax. The money felt abstract, just numbers on paper rather than something that would change his daily life. There's one more thing, he told the bank manager as they concluded their meeting. I want to make a donation to the Austin Women's Shelter. $25,000. In Kara Thorne's name. Your ex-wife? Yes. I want the donation to be public, with a press release mentioning her generosity and commitment to helping women in difficult circumstances. The bank manager looked puzzled, but made the note. Any particular reason? Call it closure. That afternoon, Nolan drove to Lennox's school to pick him up from soccer practice. His son had been living with him full-time since the divorce, adapting to their new routine with the resilience that 17-year-olds possessed. They talked about what happened, but not obsessively. Lennox seemed to understand that some adult problems didn't have simple solutions. How was practice? Nolan asked as Lennox threw his gear bag into the truck. Good. Coach says I might start varsity next season if I keep improving. That's great news. Yeah. Dad? I saw Mom yesterday. Nolan glanced at his son. Where? At the grocery store. She was working there, like at the cash register. How'd she seem? Tired. She looked tired, but she smiled when she saw me. Asked about school and soccer and stuff. Did you talk long? Just a few minutes. She said she's doing okay, that she likes having a job where she can help people. Lennox was quiet for a moment. She asked about you. What did she want to know? Just if you're doing okay. I told her you were fine. What else? She said to tell you she saw the news about the donation to the women's shelter. She said thank you. Nolan felt something twist in his chest. The donation had been intended as a subtle form of revenge, a way to publicly associate Kara's name with charity while highlighting her current circumstances. He hadn't expected her to see it as kindness. Are you okay with how things are now? Nolan asked his son. You mean with the divorce? With everything. Living with me. Only seeing your mother occasionally, the way things ended. Lennox considered the question seriously. I think so. I mean, it sucks that you guys couldn't work it out. But the way it was before, with all the tension and weird silences, that sucked too. Your mother made some bad choices. Yeah, but you didn't exactly fight to save the marriage either. The observation stung because it was accurate. Nolan had walked away from the confrontation that Friday afternoon without trying to understand what had driven Kara to such desperate behavior. He'd gone straight to legal warfare without considering whether their problems might be fixable. Would you have wanted me to fight for her? I don't know. Maybe. It's just, you guys gave up on each other pretty quickly. She gave up first. Did she? Or did you both give up a long time ago and just never talked about it? Nolan drove home through Austin traffic, thinking about his son's question. When had he stopped asking Kara about her day? When had she stopped asking about his work? When had they become roommates instead of partners? The house felt different now, more like his space than their shared space. He'd moved his office to the master bedroom and converted Kara's old office into a game room for Lennox. The living room furniture had been rearranged to accommodate a larger television and gaming system. Small changes that made the house feel like home for two people instead of three. That evening, while Lennox did homework upstairs, Nolan sat in his office and drafted the initial proposal for the Thorne Foundation for Disaster Relief Logistics. $2 million would fund operations for 3 years, time enough to develop and test systems that could be licensed to other relief organizations. The foundation would be his legacy, something more meaningful than business success or personal revenge. He'd learned from Hurricane Harvey that good intentions weren't enough if you lacked the infrastructure to implement them effectively. The foundation would bridge that gap. His phone buzzed with a text from Verity. Kara's lawyer called. She wants to discuss visitation arrangements for Lennox. Nolan typed back. What kind of arrangements? Regular schedule. Every other weekend, maybe one evening per week. She found an apartment with a second bedroom. Where? East Austin. Small place, but suitable for overnight visits. Nolan stared at the message. Kara was trying to rebuild, to create a life that included being a mother to Lennox. Part of him wanted to make it difficult for her, to use his financial advantage to limit her access to their son. But Lennox needed his mother, even if she'd proven herself capable of terrible judgment. Set up a meeting. We'll work something out at your sure. Lennox needs both parents, even if one of them destroyed the family. Nolan finished the foundation proposal and emailed it to his accountant for review. Then he went upstairs to help Lennox with calculus homework, the kind of straightforward problem-solving that reminded him why some things in life had clear solutions while others required ongoing negotiation. 3 months after the divorce, Nolan received a call from Sloan that he hadn't expected. I need to tell you something about Kara, she said without preamble. What about her? She's not doing well. I mean, she's really not doing well. Nolan was working in his home office, reviewing applications for the foundation's first grant cycle. Define not doing well. She lost the grocery store job last week. Something about missing too many shifts. And her landlord is threatening eviction if she doesn't catch up on rent. Why are you telling me this? Because she won't ask for help, and I think she's too proud to admit how bad things have gotten. That's not my problem anymore. She's Lennox's mother, which is why she can see him every other weekend and Wednesday evenings, as outlined in the custody agreement. Nolan, she's living on ramen noodles and canned soup. Her electricity got shut off yesterday. She's borrowing money from friends to buy gas for that piece of junk Honda. Nolan saved the grant application he'd been reviewing and leaned back in his chair. What do you want me to do about it? Help her? No, just temporarily. Just enough so she can get back on her feet. She had $15 million, Sloan. She chose to throw it away for a man who stole her jewelry and disappeared. Those consequences are hers to manage. She made a mistake. She made a series of calculated decisions designed to humiliate me and take as much money as possible. The only mistake was underestimating the prenup. Sloan was quiet for a moment. You've really changed, Nolan. You used to be compassionate. I used to be naive. There's a difference. So that's it. You're just going to let her suffer. I'm going to let her experience the natural consequences of her choices. If she wants to improve her situation, she can get a job and work toward stability like everyone else. With what references? With what job history? Every nonprofit in Austin knows about the scandal. Nobody wants to hire someone associated with that kind of drama. Then she can work outside the nonprofit sector. Or outside Austin. People rebuild their lives after divorce every day. Not everyone starts from nothing. She didn't have to start from nothing. She chose to start from nothing when she decided to destroy our marriage. Nolan hung up and returned to the grant applications, but his concentration was broken. He kept thinking about Kara eating ramen noodles and borrowing money for gas. Part of him felt satisfied that she was facing real consequences. Another part remembered the woman who'd asked good questions during Hurricane Harvey, who'd genuinely cared about helping disaster victims get the supplies they needed. That evening, Lennox mentioned that he'd seen his mother again. Where this time? At the bus stop near school. She was waiting for the number 12. She's taking the bus. Her car broke down. She said it needs a new transmission, but that costs more than the car is worth. Nolan felt something cold settle in his stomach. What else did she say? Not much. Just that she's looking for work and trying to get caught up on bills. Lennox paused. Dad, is it true that Mom doesn't have any money at all? Why do you ask? She looked, I don't know, thin, like she hasn't been eating much. And her clothes were kind of worn out. Your mother is learning to live within her means. But shouldn't she get something from the divorce? Like half of the house or part of your business or whatever? Nolan looked at his son, trying to decide how much truth a 17-year-old could handle. Your mother signed a prenuptial agreement before we got married. It said that if either of us committed adultery, that person would forfeit their rights to marital property. So she gets nothing. She gets nothing. That seems kind of harsh. It was the agreement she signed. She knew the terms. Yeah, but did she really think it would ever happen? I mean, people sign those things just to make lawyers happy, right? They don't expect to actually use them. Lennox's question bothered Nolan more than he wanted to admit. Had Kara really understood the consequences when she signed the prenup 12 years ago? Or had it seemed like an abstract legal requirement, something to satisfy her parents' concerns rather than a real constraint on her behavior? The agreement was clear, he said finally. She chose to violate it. I know, but she's still my mom. And if she can't afford food or a place to live, what are you asking me? I don't know. Maybe we could help her a little? Not a lot. Just enough so she's not living on the street. She's not living on the street. Yet, Nolan studied his son's face. Lennox had inherited Kara's sense of justice and Nolan's practical nature, a combination that made him see problems clearly while still believing they could be solved. Would it make you feel better if I helped your mother get back on her feet? It would make me feel better if my parents could find a way to be civil to each other. Civil is different from financial support. I know, but it's a start. That night, Nolan lay awake thinking about Kara waiting for the bus, eating ramen noodles, borrowing money from friends who were probably getting tired of her problems. He'd wanted her to face consequences, but he hadn't anticipated how devastating those consequences would be. The next morning, he called Verity. I want to set up a small trust fund for Kara, he said. How small? Enough to cover basic living expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation. Nothing luxurious, but enough so she's not destitute. Any particular reason for the change of heart? Lennox. He's worried about his mother. I don't want him carrying that burden. How much are we talking about? $2,000 a month. With strict conditions. She has to be actively looking for work. She has to maintain stable housing. She has to stick to the custody schedule with Lennox. And if she violates any of those conditions, the trust ends immediately and permanently. I'll draft the paperwork. But Nolan, are you sure about this? You fought hard to make sure she got nothing from the divorce. I fought to make sure she faced consequences for her choices. She's faced them. Now I want to make sure my son doesn't have to worry about his mother being homeless. Fair enough. I'll have the documents ready by Friday. Nolan hung up and returned to reviewing foundation applications. He wasn't helping Kara out of forgiveness or residual love. He was helping her because Lennox needed a mother who could take care of herself, and because some forms of revenge eventually became self-defeating. But the help would come with conditions, and if she violated those conditions, she discovered that his capacity for compassion had limits. 1 year after the divorce, Nolan stood in the converted garage behind his house, watching 17 high school students learn the fundamentals of supply chain management. The Thorne Foundation had awarded its first major grant to Austin ISD for a pilot program in logistics education, and Nolan had volunteered to teach the introductory course himself. The goal isn't to move things faster, he explained to the students, who sat at folding tables with laptops and notebooks. The goal is to move the right things to the right places at the right time. Speed without accuracy is just expensive chaos. A girl in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Thorne, what's the difference between logistics and supply chain management? Good question. Logistics is about the physical movement of goods. Supply chain management is about the relationships and information systems that make that movement possible. You can have perfect logistics and still fail if your supply chain doesn't communicate effectively. He pulled up a slide showing the Hurricane Harvey relief operation where he'd met Kara. This warehouse had thousands of volunteers and millions of dollars worth of supplies. But they couldn't get food and water to the people who needed it because they had no system for tracking inventory or coordinating distribution. Another student, a boy wearing a Letterman jacket from the soccer team, asked, "How do you fix something like that?" You start with information. You need to know what you have, where it is, and where it needs to go. Then you need reliable transportation and communication systems. Finally, you need people who understand their roles and can adapt when circumstances change. Nolan spent the next hour walking the students through a simulation exercise, having them organize and distribute mock relief supplies using the principles he'd outlined. They made mistakes, got frustrated, and gradually began to understand how complex systems required both structure and flexibility. "This is harder than it looks," complained a girl who'd been trying to coordinate between 3 different distribution teams. "Everything worthwhile is harder than it looks," Nolan replied. "But that's what makes it worth learning." After the students left, Nolan cleaned up the classroom and reviewed their progress reports. The pilot program was exceeding expectations, with several students already expressing interest in logistics careers. 2 companies had contacted the foundation about hiring graduates, and Austin Community College wanted to develop a more advanced curriculum. His phone buzzed with a text from Lennox. "Game tonight at 7. Can you make it?" Nolan typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Mom's coming too. Hope that's okay." Nolan paused before responding. He and Kara had been successfully civil during Lennox's events over the past few months, sitting on opposite sides of the bleachers and limiting their conversation to logistics about pickup times and school events. The trust fund had stabilized her finances enough that she'd found a part-time job at a different nonprofit and moved to a better apartment. Of course it's okay. "See you at 7. The soccer field was crowded with parents and students when Nolan arrived. He found a seat in the home team bleachers and watched Lennox warm up with the rest of the varsity team. His son had grown 2 inches over the past year and added 15 pounds of muscle. He looked confident and focused, ready for his senior season. "Mind if I sit here?" Nolan looked up to see Kara standing at the end of his row, carrying a small purse and wearing clothes that looked new but inexpensive. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, and she'd lost weight, but she looked healthier than she had during the worst period after their divorce. "Sure," he said, sliding over to make room. She sat down 2 seats away from him, far enough to avoid awkwardness but close enough for conversation if necessary. They watched the game in comfortable silence for the first 20 minutes, both focused on Lennox's performance. "He's playing well," Kara said during halftime. "He's been working hard. Trains every morning before school." "I know. He tells me about it during our dinners." "How are those going?" "Good. Better than I expected. It took a while for him to trust me again, but we're finding our rhythm." Nolan glanced at her. "Are you happy with the custody arrangement?" "I'm grateful for it. I wasn't sure you'd allow regular visitation after everything that happened. Lennox needs his mother, even a mother who made terrible mistakes, especially a mother who learned from her mistakes." Kara was quiet for a moment. "I heard about the foundation. Lennox says you're teaching high school students about logistics. It's a pilot program. If it works, we'll expand to other districts." "That's wonderful. You're doing exactly what you always talked about during Harvey. Making systems work better so people get the help they need. It's satisfying work." "I'm sure it is." She paused. "I also heard about the trust fund. I never thank you for that." "You don't need to thank me. It's for Lennox as much as for you. Still, I know what it cost you to help me after what I did." Nolan watched Lennox steal the ball from an opposing player and pass it to a teammate. "It didn't cost me anything. The money came from the lottery winnings. I don't mean financially. I mean emotionally. It would have been easier to let me struggle." "Probably. So why didn't you?" Nolan considered the question. "Because Lennox was worried about you. And because revenge stops being satisfying when it starts hurting people you care about." "Do you care about me?" "I care about your well-being as it affects our son. I want you to be stable and healthy so you can be a good mother. But you don't forgive me." "No. Will you ever?" Nolan thought about the question seriously. "I don't know. The trust is gone, and I'm not sure it can be rebuilt. But forgiveness might be possible someday, when enough time has passed that the hurt doesn't feel so immediate." "How much time?" "I have no idea." The second half started, and they returned their attention to the game. Lennox scored a goal in the 73rd minute, a beautiful shot from 20 yards out that found the upper corner of the net. Both parents cheered, standing up and applauding as their son jogged back to midfield with a huge grin. "He's got your precision," Kara said as they sat back down. "And your confidence. The good parts of both of us." "Yeah, the good parts." After the game, they walked to the parking lot together, waiting for Lennox to change clothes and collect his gear. Other parents chatted around them, celebrating the victory and making plans for the next game. "Nolan," Kara said as they reached their cars, "I want you to know that I understand why you can't forgive me. What I did was unforgivable. But I'm grateful that you're giving me the chance to be Lennox's mother again. He loves you. That doesn't change because of what happened between us." "I know, but it could have. You could have made it impossible for me to have a relationship with him." "I thought about it." "What stopped you?" "The same thing that made me set up the trust fund. Lennox deserves better than parents who use him as a weapon against each other." Kara nodded. "He does deserve better. I'm trying to be better. I can see that. Are we okay? Not as a couple, obviously, but as Lennox's parents. Are we okay?" Nolan looked at his ex-wife, the woman who destroyed their marriage and lost everything in the process. She looked tired but determined, like someone who'd learned hard lessons and was trying to apply them constructively. "We're okay," he said finally. "We're not friends, and we're not getting back together. But we're okay as co-parents. That's enough. That's more than I had any right to expect." Lennox emerged from the locker room, still glowing from his goal and the team's victory. He hugged both parents, chattering excitedly about the game and the upcoming state playoffs. "You guys want to get pizza?" he asked. "To celebrate?" Nolan looked at Kara, who looked back at him. They'd shared exactly one meal together since the divorce, an awkward dinner at a neutral restaurant to discuss custody arrangements. "Sure," Nolan said. "Pizza sounds good." "Really?" Lennox's face lit up. "Both of you, both of us," Kara confirmed. "But we take separate cars and pay for our own food." "Deal," Lennox said. "This is awesome." They drove separately to a pizza place near the school, where they found a table for 3 and ordered food like a family that had learned to function despite its fundamental brokenness. They talked about soccer and school and Lennox's college applications, carefully avoiding topics that might resurrect old conflicts. It wasn't forgiveness and it wasn't reconciliation, but it was progress, the kind that allowed their son to have both parents present for his important moments without feeling like he had to choose sides. After dinner, they hugged goodbye in the parking lot. Kara drove away in her reliable used car toward her small apartment, where she'd spend the evening grading papers for her part-time teaching job. Nolan drove home with Lennox to their house, where they'd watch game highlights and plan weekend training sessions. Different lives, different choices, but connected by their shared commitment to raising a young man who deserved better than the wreckage his parents had created. 2 years after the divorce, Nolan was leaving the foundation office when he saw Kara sitting on a bench across the street. She was reading a book, something thick and academic-looking, occasionally making notes in the margins. She looked different again. Her hair was longer. She'd gained back some weight, and she wore clothes that suggested stability rather than desperation. He almost walked to his truck without approaching her, but something about the scene reminded him of Hurricane Harvey, when she'd ask good questions and listen to his answers with genuine interest. Kara. She looked up, startled. Nolan. Hi. What are you doing here? Waiting for the bus. I had a meeting at UT about their disaster management graduate program. Graduate school, part-time, evening classes. I'm working on a master's in nonprofit administration with a focus on emergency relief operations. Nolan sat down on the bench beside her, leaving space between them. That's ambitious. It's necessary. If I want to rebuild my career, I need credentials that prove I've learned from my mistakes and can be trusted with responsibility again. How long is the program? 3 years part-time. I'm finishing my first semester next month. How are you managing tuition? Student loans, mostly. Some scholarships. The trust fund covers my living expenses, so I can use my income from work to pay for school. Nolan looked at the book in her hands. What are you reading? Humanitarian Logistics, Principles and Practice. It's about coordinating relief supplies during natural disasters. She showed him the cover. The author cites some of your work from Hurricane Harvey. Really? Chapter 7. There's a case study about how proper inventory management reduced delivery times by 60% during the Houston relief operation. Nolan felt a strange mix of pride and melancholy. His expertise was being recognized by academics, but the person who'd inspired him to pursue disaster relief work was now studying his methods as if he were a stranger. What's your thesis topic? Communication systems for multi-agency disaster response. I'm arguing that most relief operations fail not because of insufficient resources, but because organizations can't coordinate effectively with each other. That's a good topic. I thought you might approve. It's based on some of the conversations we had during Harvey about how information management is more important than resource management. You remember those conversations? I remember everything about those 3 weeks. They were some of the best of my life. Nolan was quiet for a moment. Mine too. Really? You asked better questions than most people who'd been doing disaster relief for years. I was trying to impress you. You did. Not enough to keep you interested, apparently. Nolan looked at her carefully. What do you mean? After we got married, you stopped talking to me about your work. Stopped asking my opinion about projects. I felt like you decided I wasn't smart enough to contribute anymore. That's not why I stopped. Then why? Because you seemed less interested. When I try to discuss supply chain problems, you change the subject to social events or redecorating plans. I thought you'd outgrown interest in logistics. I was trying to be a good wife. I thought you wanted someone who focused on home and family, not someone who pestered you about inventory optimization during dinner. I wanted someone who cared about the same things I cared about. That's why I fell in love with you in the first place. Kara closed the book and looked at him directly. We really misunderstood each other, didn't we? Completely. I spent years feeling like you saw me as decoration for your life. You spent years feeling like I didn't care about your work, and neither of us talked about it until it was too late. Would it have made a difference if we talked about it earlier? Nolan considered the question. I don't know. Maybe. But we can't change what happened. No, we can't. She put the book in her bag and stood up. My bus is coming. Kara. Yeah. I'm glad you're back in school. I'm glad you're pursuing disaster relief work, even though it means competing with you professionally, especially because of that. The field needs people who ask good questions. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her since Hurricane Harvey. Thank you. That means more than you know. The bus pulled up to the stop, and Kara climbed aboard. Through the window, Nolan watched her find a seat and return her book. She looked focused and determined, like someone who'd found purpose again after losing everything that he drove home thinking about parallel lives and missed opportunities. In another timeline, they might have had that crucial conversation about expectations and interests before resentment took root. They might have found a way to bridge the gap between his methodical nature and her need for emotional connection. But in this timeline, they'd each had to lose everything to understand what they'd never really had in the first place. Now, they were building separate lives connected only by their shared commitment to Linux and, apparently, to disaster relief work. IT wasn't the ending either of them had planned, but it was an ending they could both live with. 3 years after the divorce, Nolan sat on his back porch watching stars appear in the Austin sky. The foundation had grown beyond his original vision, now operating in 4 states and developing logistics protocols that were being adopted by major relief organizations. Lennox was finishing his senior year with a full scholarship to study engineering at UT, where he planned to focus on emergency infrastructure design. Dad, Lennox joined him on the porch, carrying 2 bottles of beer. Mind if I ask you something? Shoot. Do you ever regret what happened with Mom? Nolan accepted the beer and considered the question. Which part? The way it ended. The prenup thing. The fact that she lost everything. Do you think I should regret it? I don't know. Sometimes I think you were too harsh. Sometimes I think she deserved what she got. Mostly, I just wonder if there was a better way to handle it. There probably was. But I was angry and hurt, and I wanted her to face consequences for what she'd done. Did it work? Did she face enough consequences? Nolan thought about Kara waiting for the bus, eating ramen noodles, losing her job and her social circle and her financial security. More than enough, probably. But you still don't forgive her. No. Will you ever? I don't think forgiveness is the right word for what happened between us. What she did broke something fundamental about trust and respect. You don't forgive someone for that, you just learn to live with the knowledge that it happened. That sounds pretty cold. It is cold, but it's also honest. Your mother and I destroyed something that took 12 years to build, and we did it in a way that can't be undone. Lennox drank his beer in silence for a moment. Are you happy, though, with how your life turned out? Most days. I have work that matters, a son I'm proud of, and enough money to support both. That's more than most people get. But you're alone, by choice. Do you want to stay alone? Nolan looked at his son, who had Kara's directness and his own inability to avoid difficult conversations. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who makes me want to try again. But I'm not looking. Because of what Mom did. Because I learned that I'm not very good at marriage. I'm good at organizing systems and solving problems, but I'm not good at reading emotional cues or maintaining intimate relationships. That doesn't mean you should give up forever. It means I should be more careful about who I choose to trust with that level of access to my life. Fair enough. Lennox finished his beer and set the bottle on the porch railing. Mom's graduating next month. I know. She invited me to the ceremony. Are you going? Yes. She's worked hard to rebuild her life. That deserves recognition. She asked me to tell you something. What? That you got a job offer. Full-time position with the Red Cross, coordinating logistics for disaster response operations. It's based in Dallas, so she'd be moving back to be closer to her parents. Nolan felt something that might have been satisfaction. That's a good job. She'll be excellent at it. She also wanted me to tell you that she's grateful for the trust fund, for not making it impossible for her to have a relationship with me, for treating her fairly during custody discussions. She doesn't need to be grateful. I did what was best for you. She knows, but she's grateful anyway. What about you? How do you feel about her moving to Dallas? Sad, but okay. I'll be in college anyway, so it's not like I'd see her every week regardless. And she'll be doing work that makes her happy. That matters. Dad, there's something else. What? She wanted me to ask if you'd ever consider collaborating professionally. Not personally, just professionally. She thinks the Red Cross could benefit from the protocols you've developed for the foundation. Nolan was quiet for a long time. Working with Kara would mean regular contact, coordination meetings, shared projects. It would mean finding a way to function as professional colleagues despite their personal history. What do you think? He asked Lennox. I think you're both good at disaster relief work. I think you'd save more lives working together than working separately. And I think you're both mature enough to keep personal issues separate from professional responsibilities. You sound like a guidance counselor. I sound like someone who wants his parents to stop punishing each other and start doing the work they're best at. Nolan finished his beer and watched the stars brighten as the sky darkened. Somewhere in the distance, Austin hummed with its usual Friday night energy. People were making plans, starting relationships, ending relationships, building lives that would either flourish or fall apart based on choices they couldn't fully predict. Tell your mother I'll consider it, he said finally. Really? But if we work together, it's purely professional. No attempts at personal reconciliation. No revisiting the past. Just two people who happen to be good at logistics, trying to help disaster victims get the supplies they need. I think she'd be okay with that. We'll see. Lennox stood up and collected the empty beer bottles. I'm going to finish my calculus homework. You okay out here? I'm fine. Just thinking. About what? About how life rarely turns out the way you expect it to. But sometimes that's not entirely a bad thing. Deep thoughts for a Friday night. I'm a deep guy, right? Don't stay up too late being deep. Lennox went inside, leaving Nolan alone with the stars and the sound of Austin settling into evening. He thought about Hurricane Harvey and how disaster relief work had brought him and Kara together in the first place. He thought about the foundation and the students he was teaching and the protocols that were saving lives in disaster zones across the country. He thought about forgiveness and whether it was necessary for two people to work together effectively. Maybe forgiveness was overrated. Maybe what mattered more was mutual respect for professional competence and shared commitment to work that transcended personal grievances. His phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, Thorne Foundation Research, Proposal K, Thorne, MA. Nolan opened the email and found a detailed proposal for a joint research project studying communication failures during multi-agency disaster response operations. The methodology was sound, the literature review was thorough, and the potential applications were significant. At the bottom of the email, Kara had included a single line. No personal agenda. Just good work that needs doing. Nolan read the proposal twice, then forwarded it to his assistant with a note. Schedule a meeting to discuss this project. Professional meeting only. He put the phone away and returned to watching stars. Tomorrow he'd start the process of working with his ex-wife again. Not as former spouses trying to repair their relationship, but as professionals who shared expertise in something important. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't reconciliation. But it was recognition that some things mattered more than personal grievances, and that the best revenge against life's disappointments was building something useful from the wreckage. The stars grew brighter as the night deepened, and Nolan sat on his porch thinking about second chances that weren't really second chances at all, but new kinds of first chances built on the ruins of old mistakes. Victory, he realized, didn't always look the way you expected it to. Sometimes it looked like two people who destroyed each other finding a way to work together despite everything that had happened between them. Sometimes it looked like peace without forgiveness, and futures built on competence rather than love.